He was growing up in America where there's a million channels and you can flick through, and there was kung fu theater.
Most of the filmmakers were sort of opportunists. They would see something and say, oh, we can copy that and do that.
What he understood about Hong Kong cinema was its populist base.
It's
an exercise in mise en scène. It's a directorial imagination.
Hong Kong movies, Chinese movies, Japanese movies, slasher movies, like European movies, that he's like an encyclopedia.
Gut inspire or gut influence, that's very natural phenomenon.
Tarantino, he really loves those films.
I believe that, it's time for women to kick ass.
Hong Kong. Chapter 1: The Hong Kong Connection.
第一次見阿 Clinton 喺上海，一見到我話：哦，師傅 master， 哇！我當時我好點解會識講師傅 and master？ 因為我覺得可能佢睇中國嘅電影睇得多，都係講 master and 師傅。咁我講我同佢 say hello， 我話好高興認識你導演，咁大家坐喺度傾偈，佢可以第一次我同佢拍第一戲，佢帶我去佢 office 嗰度。佢打開個櫃，全部係我啲 DVD 嚟嘅。咁佢係真係一個好用功嘅導演，佢全部睇晒我以前喺邵氏公司所拍嘅戲，連啲對白都記得好清楚。咁我覺得呢個導演唔係淨係睇動作，佢連我對白，雖然佢唔識睇中文，對白入邊嘅 meaning 佢都知道。
We must put down evil. And you're evil. You've killed too many men. I've killed a lot of men.
所以我覺得呢個導演係非常好尊重，唔好講尊重我，好尊重我哋中國文化。雖然我喺 Q 標嗰度演嘅角色唔係好多，但係佢請我拍呢部戲，佢真係對中國文化係好尊重。咁卒之我都應承佢拍呢部戲。咁啊 ，Volume 1 and Volume 2我咧有演出。咁我亦都好多謝呢個導演對我哋中國文化。
I think the first director, who overtly people felt that he paid homage to Hong Kong films probably was Quentin Tarantino. Are you rolling? From the get-go, Quentin came out and said very openly, I'm inspired not so much by mainstream American filmmakers, but by the guys like Monty Hellman and Sam Fuller here in America, by the European action filmmakers, and very much by the Chinese, Japanese filmmakers. I don't think Korea really had risen at that time, but he knew the filmmakers from Hong Kong and Japan very well. And then you go back to when Reservoir Dogs was being shopped around at a script stage, you had on the front page, thanks to, Chow Yun-fat, John Woo, Ringo Lam, whoever, all the people who influenced him, citing Hong Kong filmmakers directly. So I think he did the industry a huge service. About whenever year Kill Bill was made, I was in Cannes.
And we'd been to the Hong Kong party.
And it was me and an actor called Gary Daniel, who's a British, LA-based B-movie action guy. And we're walking through the lobby of the Carlton, and Quentin's walking towards us. So I walk up and I say, hi, I'm Bay Logan. And he goes, oh my God, Bay Logan, oh, yeah, I read your book. And he said, do you have time for a beer? I'm like, oh. I think so.
So we sat down.
And from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., he acted out for me every scene, every shot in Kill Bill, which at that time was one movie. And even stuff that ended up being in the he said, and they're fighting, and then Vivica's facing off, and she goes, you can't kill me, because I got a husband, I got a kid, you can't kill me. And then Yuma goes, speak no further, bitch. He acted out all the characters, which is brilliant. And at 4 o'clock, we took a picture, chatted a bit more, and we spoke about other stuff in between, but he told me the scene, what Hong Kong movie, what Japanese, it was like a secret code, you know? And my biggest fear was that, alone of everybody else in the world, I would never enjoy Kill Bill, because it could never match, as a film, the entertainment value of seeing Quentin perform it. But I have to tell you, in this case, it comes pretty close.
He is a living, breathing film fan. He's from the TV and video generation. Suddenly we had a VHS. Suddenly I could go and rent movies. Suddenly I had access to movies that I would never see on TV. And I think it's the same with Tarantino, that suddenly, he was growing up in America where there's a million channels and you can flick through, and there was Kung Fu theater, so you could watch Kung Fu movies, you'd watch spaghetti westerns, and then he was working at a video shop and getting access to movies. He's kind of like a sponge. He absorbs everything. Okay, let's say Kill Bill. Okay, Kill Bill has the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. They're the 5 deadly venoms from Shaw Brothers. You've got the Japanese girl, Gogo Yubari, using the yo-yo from Super Kandeka from Yo-Yo Girl Cop, but using it kind of like the Fatal Flying Guillotine from Shaw Brothers. You've got the blood, people getting their arms cut off like, one-armed swordsman. Gordon Liu is playing, the Master Pak Mei, which is a character from another Shaw Brothers movie.
Kill Bill is probably the more literal one. The character that Gordon Liu plays in Kill Bill is taken from Executioners from Shaolin. But this character appears in other Hong Kong martial arts films, but I believe that Tarantino was probably inspired by that great movie. And in Executioners from Shaolin, which was made in Shaw Brothers, I think in the mid to late 70s, and he has said himself that Liu Jialiang is certainly one of the greatest Hong Kong directors.
咁之前導演亦都講話，佢入邊有個角色叫白眉。咁有個秘密咧，就唔係我做嘅，呢個秘密就係 Quentin 佢自己想做翻白眉。咁當時佢問我喺上海見面嗰時，佢俾幅相我睇，佢化晒妝，導演化晒妝成個白眉道人咁樣。佢問我佢似唔似白眉道人？咁我話白眉道人係一個中國人，佢個面孔都係中國人。我話你係一個西方人，你點扮都扮唔到白眉道人嗰個中國人嘅面孔。我話如果你真係要做嘅，可能有人接受，但係如果係要人嚟批評你係咪一個似唔似白眉道人咧，我唔敢批評。咁我最嬲尾同佢講話，佢問我咁佢而家化晒妝係一個白眉道人啦，喺我心目中佢似乜嘢咧？我就講話你似一個聖誕老人，因為你係西方面孔，我只能夠因為聖誕老人都係白色鬚噶嘛，哇！你只係一個聖誕老人。
Yes, thank you very much. Excuse me, do you have any syrup? So in terms of Hong Kong cinema, I think he likes the ethos, the tone, the bravado of Hong Kong cinema. And I think he likes the extreme emotional situations you get in Hong Kong cinema. And of course the action. I mean, for something like Kill Bill, clearly he's borrowing not only from the swordplay film, the Japanese Jidaigeki and Chambara films, but also he's borrowing from the Wuxia the swordplay films. So Kill Bill is kind of his, of course, his homage to Asian cinema, from Bruce Lee and Lau Kar-leung and all the others. I think what they appreciate is Tarantino's honest respect for them. He really understands. He begins the film with Kill Bill, the Shaw Brothers logo, and has the zooms in and out like the 1970s and 80s Hong Kong movies. There's a way in which he's rendering them respect too. He pays them the compliment, as he did with Inglourious Basterds, of saying, you have a great national tradition here. You have a great cinema here. And I'm not stealing from it. I'm alluding to it. I'm borrowing or paying homage to it, you know.
A big moment for Hong Kong, I think, was the rise of the party, the Communist Party in 1949, which effectively shut down the Shanghai film industry and forced everybody to find other places in Asia to make films. And then in the early 50s, the Shaw Brothers came and took over the land on Clearwater Bay and opened Shaw Brothers Studios, which was this incredible filmmaking machine, the like of which the industry has never seen before or since. And I think they dominated the market for a long time, and other studios that came and went during that era could not match Shaw's.
我從未演過白眉，我覺得第一個演白眉嘅應該係我嘅前輩羅烈先生，佢都去咗世。
照反派的規矩。
The way that they did these kind of very bold, brightly coloured, the blood was bright, the sky was bright, the robes were bright, that very clean, bright look to the films. And so the establishment of Shaw's evidently had a huge impact.
好似 Kill Bill 我做呢個 Johnny Mo， 我戴個 mask 啦，呢個就係 Bruce Lee 嘅青蜂俠嗰個眼罩，同埋 Uma Thurman 佢着一件衫，嗰件 sportwear 咧都係 Bruce Lee， 所以我覺得導演 Tarantino 佢係好欣賞 Bruce Lee 嘅功夫嘅電影，所以我覺得佢係對 Bruce Lee 一個尊敬致敬。
Bruce is a very charismatic person. He's a real genius, really, in his field, in his own way. First time I saw him on television. He did something I thought it was fantastic, because it's never been done before. So I looked for him.
Bruce Lee was a huge star in Hong Kong from the Green Hornet. The Green Hornet was being marketed here as the Kato show. Shaw Brothers offered Bruce Lee a standard contract, and I think Bruce Lee realized that it could be great, he could break out, or he could just be one of 20,000 guys. Golden Harvest came in not with a lot more money, but just a little bit more money, and he offered to be a partnership. I mean, you know, if you look at The Big Boss, originally James Tien, who's one of the co-stars, was meant to be the lead. And, you know, what was meant to introduce Bruce Lee in a secondary role became the main role. And then, you know, it broke records. Then Fist of Fury came out, broke records. Then Way of the Dragon. And then, you know, they began Game of Death. And then suddenly Warner Brothers took interest and wanted to do Enter the Dragon. And that was like kind of the first real co-pro issue here.
That meant that you had somebody who was an international icon. I mean, before that, everybody had been local. The most you could ask for from a Chinese guy is that everybody in Asia might like him. But normally it was just Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, those markets. With Bruce Lee, suddenly had an international icon. And that was a huge transformation. The idea that non-Chinese would cheer for a Chinese man, that kind of starts with Bruce Lee.
When you can be open to him, understanding him, try to work with him to help him realize his own theories. He's very happy.
Golden Harvest kind of opened the door into the international thing. That Shaw Brothers' Five Fingers of Death had been sold internationally and done well, but the Bruce Lee movies kind of really opened the door. And then I think that was what happened, that suddenly the West started taking an interest. In America and everything, you had the drive-in circuit, so the grindhouse cinemas where you could go and see double bills. And I mean, even in England, we used to have it, there'd be the double bills of like a horror movie and a martial arts movie. Then you suddenly started having things like, Shaw Brothers doing the co-production with Hammer Films, like, Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. And like you said, there was, spaghetti western meets kung fu with like The Master and the Gunfighter with Lee Van Cleef and Lo Lee. Bruce Lee opened so many doors for Hong Kong cinema.
雖然我做嗰個角色嘅 Johnny Mo 唔係李小龍，但我希望做到最好，唔可以失禮李小龍曾經戴過個面罩，俾我一個壓力嚟嘅。我對呢個人係十分尊重，就算今時今日李小龍再生嘅，我都十分尊重佢。
I can relate to it better because the choreography and the fight is more Asian feel, And plus, Uma Thurman is wearing, Bruce Lee's outfit. When I watched Kill Bill, it was very gore, very bloody. I was thinking I can't even really imagine myself doing that because of the action and everything that it requires of a female actor. But then now I'm doing Snowblade, and I'm naked in it, and I'm saying today there's not enough blood.
Snowblade must be near.
Hey, dark eyes.
Who are you?
Vengeance. Kill Bill is very raw. It's very raw. It's very gore. There are a lot of blood. But what is more important about it is when I watch it, I can actually feel it. For example, there is actually this scene where Uma Thurman is being raped while she was not awake. I can feel, as a woman. And then when she woke up and she killed the nurse, it's very...
How do I say that?
You can feel it, Like, you can actually feel the action and it feels painful. And it's hard because with film, it's usually 2D. And it's very important for an audience to be able to feel what the actress or what the actor is going forward with their emotions and to actually feel what they're actually really doing, like that anger and that pain and that, yeah.
Chapter 2, Shaolin Action Gore.
I think because it is universal in that it's almost a revert to the days of silent cinema. Movies, after sound came in, became very talky. People would sit and talk for great lengths of time. Now, if you speak English, it's fine. But if you're French or Spanish, maybe you don't want to hear somebody talking in English for 90 minutes. And even in America, people like, movement and action and style. And I think what Hong Kong cinema has is universality, because in the old days, they would actually not record sound at all. So you'd shoot all the dialogue in 2 days, and then you could spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks shooting the action. So this made this style of cinema very accessible to people of all cultures. And that was the primary thing, the fact that you didn't need to understand the words to get it. And I also think the fact that they devoted all their time to the movement meant that the movement that resulted was significantly more exciting than what you were getting in other film cultures around the world.
When you look at Hong Kong action films, particularly of the 70s, you'll see some quite a lot of blood, if I can put it that way. So there is a certain, I said cartoony violence, but there's a certain graphic violence to Hong Kong cinema that, yes, definitely you see in Tarantino's work.
Traditionally between the Hong Kong style of action and the American style was you felt like you were watching people fight. You felt like you were watching cars chase. What Hong Kong did is it made you feel like you were in a fight. You got breathless watching stuff.
What?
You know, you felt you were engaged. And I think that's something that Quentin, you know, absorbed quite readily.
I think what Hollywood took from Hong Kong cinema was the concept of action and the concept of space, how to maintain a certain rhythm of action is something that Hong Kong filmmakers do very well. And they do it well because they're constantly changing the camera positions, I think. A Hard-Boiled by John Woo. The third act, as we would say in the Hollywood terms, the whole third act is basically a couple of guys running through a hospital, you know, on fire. That is like probably 30 minutes, and it's crazy. And you would probably not have seen that sort of thing in a Hollywood film before John Woo and before Hong Kong action films.
名中文名叫楊盼盼，英文名叫 Sharon Yang。跟住咧就係舊年呢個 hit 黑咧，就點解我要搞 hit 黑咧？因為 hit 黑係動作，香港電影動作，我都係香港電影動作。OK， 同埋咧好多人都喺香港電影動作入邊咧，就成為一個巨星。咁我哋成龍又好啦。李連杰又好，就係內地嘅演員李連杰，佢都要喺香港先至出到去海外，就係所以香港電影動作係非常之好嘅。
He watched more Hong Kong cinema than any of us. When you talk about doing stunt work and working in action cinema, it's not just about being a good martial artist. It's not just about having a good physique or just being acrobatic. You have to do so many things, you know, and I think that's what really intrigues me about it, is the skill sets required to do this work.
其實咧，你要講翻Q 標啦，其實我都好中意佢㗎。其實佢有佢自己嘅風格㗎。因為咧佢係吸收咗我哋香港嘅電影動作，同埋佢自己諗嘅一個電影動作出嚟。咁佢覺得我哋嗰個電影動作咧，同佢比較近啲，所以佢中意我哋。同埋咧，頭先我講緊就係話，佢嘅動作會有距離係唔多係接近，同埋咧個闊好多空間，打嘅時個 touch 個空間好多。但係如果你講緊 Q 標咧，佢想嘅嘢咧就係話，同我哋香港電影動作咧就好快，同埋咧黐得好埋。嗰個空間冇咁闊啦，所以你睇個畫面入邊咧比較係快嘅，同埋好舒服嘅。但係咧有啲人個畫面咧 touch 落去咧，好似好多空間睇得唔靚啊。所以問題就係話技巧，應該講緊技巧同埋花式啲，同埋花式得嚟咧，我哋有 power， 呢個就係我哋嘅香港電影動作，應該咁樣講。所以 Q 標咧其實好多花嘅，好似用劍，同我哋。中國嗰個動作就係有劍啦、花啦，但係佢有 power 就係咁啊。
The Japanese and the Chinese have different ways of handling moments of violence. The Japanese, and this comes out of the swordplay tradition, the Japanese tend to have a very slow, long, almost boring pause, and the violence spikes. It just arrives like that. You think of Kitano, for instance, you know, where people are just sitting in a bar, look at each other, look back, and it's over, you know. And they get that in Kurosawa too. Kurosawa the same way. Stillness, and then an eruption, and then stillness. The Hong Kong tradition is very different. Hong Kong tradition is lots of action, lots of action with small pauses in between. So, bop, 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 pause. Bop, 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 pause. Bop, 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 bop. It's like Chinese opera.
Oui, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Qu'est-ce que vous me voulez?
And I think that Tarantino is, in this respect, maybe more Japanese. Because you think of Inglourious Bastards, the scene builds and builds and builds and builds, and then it's over. Like in the tavern, the gunfight in the tavern. It's just, it's almost 10 seconds maybe, I don't know. It's very brief.
What he understood about Hong Kong cinema was its populist base and how to appeal to an audience in terms of action and ludicrous action, actually. Tarantino has a kind of attitude towards making cinema that you find in a number of Hong Kong filmmakers. That the idea is that action is all. When you look at the car chase movie that he made, it's just one long car sequence. You could say that that is like a martial arts movie.
Death Proof is different because Death Proof is clearly a two-part film where you have lots of conversation. Just talk, 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 girl talk, all this talk. And then the second half, one long action scene, yes. And I almost think that that's his effort to say, if you want action, I'm going to give you more action than you've seen in any of my other films in one place, you know. And it is like the sustained fight in a Hong Kong film, or the sustained chase in a Jackie Chan film. It just goes on and on, like Project A or Police Story. The chases just go on and on and on, and you think, okay, it's over. Nope, just keeps going. So you're right, that's the closest. Death Proof is the closest, I think. Freeze frame. Last, yeah, and the freeze frame that a lot of the 1970s kung fu films have. Yeah.
Quentin absolutely, I think, has that ability to make something very visceral. And sometimes less is more. Like, obviously, the ear coming off in Reservoir Dogs is nothing today, but at the time it was absolutely outrageous. And then you get, the Japanese cut of Kill Bill, where he puts you in the middle of that whole House of the Blue Leaves fight. And, you feel like you're in a fight sequence. You feel like you're involved in a fight sequence, rather than the traditional American way, which to this day there are films where this is the case, where you just step back as they look at the pretty pictures, look at the spectacle. And that's an aspect, an element of his films I absolutely feel he picked up, maybe even like, by osmosis from watching so many Hong Kong films.
In a way, Tarantino isn't that interested in psychology either. Not very much, I think. Sometimes, I think he has some very good moments, like the Robert Forster character in Jackie Brown. Is a very interesting character psychologically, and the Pam Grier character too. That makes it more like he is like a conventional American director in that respect. But a film like Inglourious Bastards, I don't see any psychology of any consequence in this movie. It's a performance. It's a dazzling performance. So how can I do with these situations and so on? Though I have to say, Landa is a pretty interesting character. But no, I think the difference is American cinema is not as good with the percussive impact of violence. It's not as good at the visceral qualities of violence in action pictures, but it does have another dimension that tends to be more psychological. In another one of his movies I like very much, Jackie Brown, where he just lets the scenes play. They go on and on. Every scene is like 3 or 4 minutes longer than it would be if another director had made that scene. And it just becomes a rhythm for the whole film, that it's very steady, it's very calm. By the end, when you have all the violence at the end, it's all been built up to very carefully. He thinks about these things in a way, I think, pacing, and we would say in English, pacing. He thinks about things like that more carefully, I think, than a lot of other filmmakers do.
Chapter 3, Reservoir on Fire.
一啲叫 patriotic 嘅電影咧，即係一啲幾刺激嘅電影。我成日都講緊電影咧，就係可以通過啲子彈、一啲武術咧，都令到全世界嘅中意電影嘅朋友喺埋一齊咧。 咁如果叫我講一個香港好典型嘅特點咧，就係我哋香港嘅電影咧，就一個幾高效，同埋一個幾刺激，一啲好動感、一啲都市為主嘅一種電影。咁所以如果香港電影能夠衝出世界咧，主要都係因為佢嘅都市感啦。咁大家都係用一啲槍啊，或者用粒子彈啊，或者用啲武術咧，或者係用一啲好特別嘅香港式嘅愛情咧，就令到全世界嘅中意電影嘅朋友咧，中意咗香港嘅特點。
The American cinema was starting to make the urban crime thriller a very important genre with films like Lethal Weapon and other films that are set in a city with very complicated plots involving gangsters and police. The Hong Kong filmmakers, I think, realized, especially the low-budget filmmakers, realized that this is something they could do too. They didn't need a lot of costumes. They didn't need big build sets like the Shaw Brothers had done in the 1960s. They were able to do something that was very much in keeping with contemporary world cinema, the policier, but at the same time, they could do it very cheaply on a low budget because they have all of Hong Kong before them.
咁就亦都係譬如好似昆天拍咗一部叫做Pulp Fiction。咁呢啲黑色嘅幽默，呢啲黑色嘅劇情咧，喺我哋其實喺 Johnny Do 嘅導演入邊，一啲電影入邊咧，亦都係可以揾到一啲好多唔同嘅因素喺入邊。咁所以我諗昆天係一個佢能夠咁成功咧，就因為佢喺我哋香港一啲電影入邊咧揾到一啲叫做語言嘅精神。我諗呢個語言嘅精神咧，係可以令到昆汀嘅電影咧咁成功。我諗呢樣嘢係值得我哋大家喺度去討論。
The Killer, without doubt. The Killer was the first one that really got imported to the United States. You can argue that earlier, of course, we had the Bruce Lee films. We saw those. And a lot of kung fu films were playing in the United States in the 1970s. But most filmmakers didn't pay any attention to them. When John Woo has Chow Yun-fat and the hard-boiled jumping up, firing two guns, one out of each hand, I mean, a lot of American directors picked up on that right away.
Sitting on Fire, nobody's wearing black suits. The black suits come from Better Tomorrow. True Romance. He's got people watching Better Tomorrow 2 on TV.
我諗昆汀因為佢中意亞洲電影啦，咁所以其實好多題材或者好多元素咧，睇我哋林嶺東嘅電影入邊咧，可以揾到啲元素嘅，即係等於我哋林嶺東以前拍個戲叫做City of Fire， 就叫《龍虎風雲》。咁如果我哋喺昆汀入邊嘅電影咧，我哋睇一部戲叫《落水狗》咧，咁其實好多嘅 situation。好多個環境因素咧，其實喺入邊好相似嘅。
Hello, I'm Ringo Lam. Fucking dirty, I don't make a good. In America, I like I said French Connection. I like Godfather, so I like Coppola a lot. I like Martin Scorsese, like The Taxi Driver. I still like his earliest works. Influence, so much influence on me. I saw Reservoir Dogs. Definitely, that is a very good movie. If Tarantino once he watched City on Fire, he got the story concept or the character concept. No big deal, very natural. But in that movie, Reservoir Dogs, it's not a copy. He did the movie actually something different. Even the style is different.
我有睇錯嘅，就你唔好講嘢啊！講掂條數先啊！富哥，你切咗啊？揾槍接住大佬，放低槍，放低佢！你叫我唔好亂嚟啊！唔係你死梗。算啦，富哥， 我死到你可以瞓到瞓。唔得，你救過我，我爭你一條命。邊個咁喐親你，我懟冧邊個。南哥，你想點出就得啦。
I would say he is a very smart guy, very talented. He has a different treatment, different presentation to play out. Even if there's a scenes taken from the Chinese cinema, he has a way to make it the presentation different, the style different. Quentin Tarantino, you look at his style, the tempo only. The tempo is not the American tempo. The American tempo is very fast, fast cut, very fast, very good cut, of course, right? Quentin Tarantino is very good in play out scenes. Every individual scenes, if there's tension, he play good. The character play good. No rush. China movie, Hong Kong movie, American movie. The bottom line should make a good movie.
Yes, immediately you look at it and go, it's very, very similar to City on Fire. But there's also elements of The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. There's elements of Stanley Kubrick's The Killing. A lot of people claim that, Tarantino's ripping off a Hong Kong movie or he's ripping off this. And he's not. I think he's taking elements. But he's working them around in his own way. City on Fire was highly regarded in Hong Kong, but I think after Reservoir Dogs, a lot more people went back and looked at it again.
Chapter 4, The White Lotus Architect.
To me, Tarantino's a director who looks at a movie like an architect would. He sees, okay, this part goes here, this part goes here, this part goes here. He's very self-conscious about the way he arranges the pieces of the film as a whole. The differences between him, say, and Hong Kong filmmakers, I think. Hong Kong filmmakers wouldn't be as interested in structure as he is, in having these big architectural blocks, chapters. He calls a lot of this in a lot of his films chapters. There's Kill Bill Volume 1, Kill Bill Volume 2, and then inside there's chapters. This, I think, most Hong Kong filmmakers would say, why would you do that? So they're not as interested in kind of playing with structure as he is.
我諗呢個都係巧合嚟嘅，即係等於我哋睇法國電影啊。法國電影好多時咧都係喺坐低喺嗰度飲下紅酒啊，食下飯去解決呢個問題。其實我哋一樣，中國人我哋都係對食咧就特別中意嘅。咁所以其實我哋睇杜琪峰嘅電影啦，或者林嶺東嘅電影啦，好多時咧都係喺飯台上邊咧去解決一個問題。
Ami Chen, vos arts martiaux sont puissants. Je suis admiratif. Merci. Les éloges d'un connaisseur sont sans prix. Vous m'envoyez très honoré. Merci.
即係呢個係一個我諗係好現實，同埋係我諗中國係一個特點。咁所以昆汀有啲電影喺食嘢上邊，其實通過食嘢咧，其實係解決緊呢個問題。咁所以其實我諗係亞洲電影對昆汀喺呢個食飯上邊咧係有少少嘅影響佢。
We think of him making action pictures. I actually don't think he's very interested in physical action on the whole. First of all, we know he's very interested in conversations and dialogues. He's interested in long dialogue scenes, like in *Inglourious Basterds*, where you just have these fantastically long conversations between people. It's wonderful. And he's actually quite interested, I think, in suspense. He's interested in a slow build-up of emotion before finally something happens. And something like happens very quickly in many cases. You think a film like, go back to *Inglourious Basterds*, where every scene is a kind of interrogation scene. It's a questioning scene. From the beginning when Londa goes to the farm and asks questions of the farmer, to the tavern scene where people are asking each other questions, playing the game. Almost every scene is an interrogation. And he gets enormous mileage out of this. But again, it's not something I think he takes specifically from Hong Kong. It's because he loves people talking. He loves to listen to people talk. And that's not characteristic of Hong Kong cinema. Hong Kong action cinema is little talk, more action, visual storytelling.
Chapter 5. Last Action Fiction.
The one thing, well, there are many things that I love about the old martial arts movies, but you know, the one thing that I like the most is they're crazy. They're just nuts. The acrobat that they do, the imagination that they have with people flying all over, or you know, all the somersaults and the killing that they do is so imaginative and innovative. And it is a fantasy that comes true, and you can watch it with your own eyes, and you think, oh no, although I will never ever, experience this in my real life, but within that 90 minutes in a theater, that's something that's, that's true to me, and I'm involved with, that fantasy, and I'm part of it. And this is why I love martial arts movie.
In an odd way, you very rarely see any real people in a Tarantino movie, or indeed a Hong Kong film. They do make verite films here, but nobody really wants to see them. And I think that's something that he got, the fact that, that's not really interesting to him. All his people are really extraordinary characters, and, like the guys in Pulp Fiction. And I'm sure there are no two hitmen who walk around like that, any more than, people walk around in the long coat and the matchstick and the glasses like Chow Yun-fat as Mark Gore in Better Tomorrow. But when John Woo looks at the world, that's how he wants gangsters to look. And when Quentin looks at the world, that's how he wants hitmen to look. And people respond to that, because I think there's been a move in American cinema to kind of focus on reality to the expense of truth, without any analysis of the films they make. Hong Kong filmmakers, I think, have a very keen sense of what is true, particularly the higher end people like the Johnny Toes, the Choi Harks, the Ringo Lambs. These directors, when you look at their works, Kirk Wong back in the day, you feel that there's an honesty to the emotion, even in an overblown situation. So you feel something, and I think that also Quentin taps into that same wellspring.
The idea of an alternative history. Suppose we had a team of Jews who went out to ruthlessly kill Nazis, and suppose that Hitler and Goebbels were in the same, and Goering were all in the same movie theater at the same time. I mean, this is a very big step, and as you probably know, this was very controversial in America. It's an exercise in mise en scène. It's a directorial imagination, I think, at work. And I think this is really characteristic of him. What he likes about all cinemas, all genre cinemas, I think, is that they're ambitious about engaging the spectator. They're interested in storytelling and how to tell a story. They're interested in all kinds of formal elements. I mean, he's a formalist. He's a formalist director. His films aren't very realistic, really. And he's a director interested in playing a game of form with the audience, making you think one thing's going to happen and another. In a way, he's in a tradition, I would say, of Hitchcock. Even though he makes films very differently from Hitchcock, Hitchcock always approached every film as a kind of formal problem. Rear Window. How do I make a movie that takes place in a single room and what the person in the room can see outside? Or Lifeboat. How do I make a movie where all the action takes place in a boat, a little boat, And I think Tarantino is interested in the same kind of structural questions, formal questions. But of course, he's much more influenced by genre cinema in a way than Hitchcock was.
I think that one can't help but be influenced by some of his movies. You could say that I think Pulp Fiction certainly is one of the most influential films in the past 2 decades. And you do get probably some traces of that in Hong Kong movies. Just the whole way of presenting the anti-hero, for example.
It blew my mind away when I first watched it, and it felt like a roller coaster, and I thought, okay, this is what movies should be. And it kind of moved me, and it excited me, and made me interested in making movies. Because before that, I never knew that there's someone behind the camera, you know, called a director.
But,
yeah, it made me decide to be a director eventually.
A lot of people will complain, but it's very easy to take those influences and do a bad movie. And, you know, it's very easy to throw everything, like, you know, okay, I like Alain Delon movies, so I'll have a character like Alain Delon. And then I like Jerry Lewis, so I'll put Jerry Lewis style comedy in there, and I'll put this and I'll put that, and it won't work. But with Tarantino, he's put these elements together and he's made them work. I mean, he's got the dialogue that works so well. Yeah, he's got people giving great performances. Yeah, he's got the pop culture references.
But then you can't really tell which is from where, because he has already formed his own, you know, shooting, his way of looking at it through his eyes.
When I first came to Hong Kong, I would never have believed Gordon Liu's going to be in a huge movie with, you know, Uma Thurman. I'd never believed Sammo Hung could have an American TV show. I'd never believed Jackie Chan was going to be a star in America. That Chow Yun-fat would be in an Oscar-winning film doing swordplay. That Yuen Woo-ping would be the fight choreographer for a movie with Keanu Reeves.
So the filmmakers were sort of opportunists. They would see something and say, oh, we can copy that and do that. But with Tarantino, he really loves those films. He loves the Hong Kong cinema. And so he's a devotee. He isn't just a borrower. He wants to capture some of the qualities that he loves in these films and bring them into his own kind of films, his own world.
No, but he's a very, very lucky bastard that he's been able to do what pretty much all of us have wanted to do, and he's been given that opportunity to pay homage to all the stuff he wants to do, you know, like, because he's found the right way to do it.
It's a line from, I think, from Cocteau when he said, never state what you can imply. And I think a lot of American cinema is based on statement, and Quentin's cinema is based on implication.
Which is a very European and very Asian view, a very Asian aesthetic.
Imagine a movie, you know, Quentin Tarantino directing Lau Ching-wan or Louis Koo or Daniel Wu, or imagine Vengeance directed by Quentin Tarantino, produced by Johnny To. That would be something to watch, yeah? You know, Johnny To wants to do the third election. Produce it, let Quentin Tarantino direct it. That I want to pay and see. That's what I want to see.
Maybe he could remake the Red Circle, the Melville film, Cercle Rouge. He could remake that in Hong Kong. We'd have to get the top actors. Tony Leung Chi-wai, Tony Leung Ka-fai, obviously Chow Yun-fat. You have to get all the top actors to direct something, yeah? Could be good, huh?